Cleo, Nauru has in the past made principled decisions on different issues, including, of course, supporting Taiwan, recognizing Taiwan, despite pressure from China. So what has happened this time?
I think that there is an enormous amount of weight put to bear on Nauru in multiple different sectors, including obviously economic. Nauru is going to be hosting the Micronesian Games in 2026, and undoubtedly China's offered a bunch of money for that. But the big thing is that Nauru has the seat to be the Secretary General for the Pacific Island Forum in the next round. And that's something that Beijing just simply couldn't have stood. To have the Secretary General of the Pacific Island Forum, the main regional organization, being held by a country that recognizes Taiwan would have been completely anathema to it. So undoubtedly, every stop was pulled out, both coercive, undoubtedly, but also enticing.
So in terms of enticing, Nauru has for a while been keen to develop a port. How do you think China may be enticing Nauru with regard to that port?
So the interesting thing about the port is Nauru is, yes, it's small, but it's very well located. So its port could be very important for transshipment across the region. Bigger ships could come in, it could be broken up and go out to the Pacific Islands. And similarly, Air Nauru is a very important regional airline, reaching a lot of the smaller Pacific Island countries. And it was given multilateral funding to develop that port. But that multilateral funding, as often happens with ADB and World Bank, the contract ended up being won by a Chinese company. And China just sat on the port, delayed the building, delayed the opening of it.
And do you expect with the bottleneck on that particular port that will see progress now that Nauru recognizes Beijing?
I think it's likely that the port may get completed, but it'll be under the control, de facto, at least control of Chinese shipping companies.
What sort of security implications might there be for Taiwan in Nauru switching to Beijing? Is there any room for that port, for example, to be, expanded from a shipping port into a military port?
Sure, absolutely. I'd say that also on the political warfare front, this very much weakens the Pacific Island Forum's almost neutrality. You'll only have 3 countries left there that recognize Taiwan: Tuvalu, Marshall Islands, and Palau. And now when China says we want a Pacific Island Forum meeting in Beijing, what are those 3 countries going to do? Are they going to not attend? So you're starting to get more and more of a weight within the Pacific Island Forum for pro-Beijing policies. So Beijing can use those other countries effectively as proxies to put pressure on those Taiwan recognizing countries, the last 3 remaining ones, to fall into line. There's also the overall strategic architecture of the region as a whole, which currently, to at least some degree, is being pushed through the Pacific Island Forum, where Taiwan's position becomes greatly weakened.
Can you explain why the position, the sort of geostrategic positioning of Nauru, of these Pacific Islands, is important to any defense of Taiwan?
Sure. All you have to do is dig out your old World War II maps and see where Japan was desperate to hold on to in order to be able to push Australia down, keep the US out, and maintain that perimeter. It's very similar to what China is trying to do through these political warfare efforts.
3 Pacific Islands have a special security arrangement with the US. Could you explain what that is and how strong it is in light of the pressure that you say will become increasing?
There are 3 countries that have this very deep defense relationship with the U.S. Palau, Federated States of Micronesia, and the Marshall Islands. They form a corridor across the middle of the Central Pacific that go roughly between Hawaii and the Philippines, and through them to Guam, and then up towards Taiwan. 2 out of those 3 are 2 of the ones that remain that recognize Taiwan: Palau on one side and Marshall Islands on the other. Federated States of Micronesia in the middle recognizes China. That zone is critical for U.S. defense architecture. That zone across the middle of the Pacific is what allows the U.S. Navy, Air Force, the submarines, everything to get across from Hawaii in order to be able to reach the first and second island chain, to resupply the bases in Japan and South Korea, and of course to reach Taiwan. As those zones become more compromised, and already the middle one is heavily compromised by China, it starts to become more difficult for the U.S. to get across with the ease with which it had before. And this is very much part of China's goal. It very much wants to flip Palau and RMI away from Taiwan to China, because putting in those embassies, those Chinese embassies, means that they've got a forward operating base for soft and hard security operations. And by coming up through Nauru and already having the middle one, they're well on their way. And the U.S. has not been renewing the agreement, the financial component of that agreement that underpins the defense architecture.
So do you think the U.S. will take this as a kind of warning shot to basically renew those compact agreements?
I very much hope so. I mean, they're sitting in Congress. Every day that passes is a day that Chinese political warfare in Palau and Marshall Islands has to say the U.S. doesn't take you seriously. They're going to leave you out here to hang, and we are your better option. Take a look at Nauru. Nauru just flipped, and they're going to be doing great. Take a look at Solomon Islands, which just hosted the Pacific Games thanks to us. And every day that the compact isn't renewed is a day that China can dig in deeper and make it more difficult going forward.